No man can rob me of my will, not even Zeus himself. Epictetus, Discourses.
There is a war fought without weapons, waged in silence, and most people are losing it without ever knowing they are in battle. It happens in the space between what someone said to you and the wound it left behind. It happens in the hours you spend replaying a conversation, searching for the moment you should have said something different. It happens every time you shrink a little to keep peace with someone who was never interested in peace to begin with. Marcus Aurelius understood this war intimately. Surrounded by flatterers, betrayers, and men who smiled while plotting his downfall, he wrote each morning a single warning to himself. Today I shall meet the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, the envious. He did not write this to complain. He wrote it to prepare, because a soldier who expects the ambush survives it, and a soldier who does not is destroyed by surprise alone. This is the war we address today. Not the toxic person standing in front of you, but the inner war their presence ignites within you. The doubt they plant, the anger they provoke, the exhaustion they leave behind long after they have left the room. Epictetus, a man born into slavery, chained by masters who owned his body but never once touched his judgment, discovered the first law of this war. What another person does belongs to them. How you respond belongs entirely to you. This single distinction, properly understood, becomes an armor no manipulation can pierce. Seneca, writing from the treacherous court of an emperor who could end his life with a single word, revealed something even sharper. The mind that reacts is already defeated. The mind that observes, weighs, and chooses its response from a place of stillness cannot be governed by another man's cruelty. This is not weakness disguised as virtue. This is strength so complete it no longer needs to prove itself. What you are about to hear are not comforting platitudes. They are weapons, forged by men who faced betrayal, exile, and death, and emerged with their inner citadel untouched. By the end of this journey, you will not merely understand how to endure toxic people. You will understand how to become someone their poison can no longer reach. The first lesson begins now, and it will change how you see every wound another person has ever caused you.
Topic 1. The Weapon of Discernment.
Every toxic encounter you have ever survived shares one hidden root, and until you see it clearly, you will keep bleeding from wounds that were never truly yours to carry. Epictetus called it the discipline of desire, but its truest name is discernment, the ability to separate what belongs to you from what belongs to another. Most people live their entire lives without ever learning this distinction, and it is precisely this ignorance that toxic people exploit without even needing to try. Consider the moment someone insults you, dismisses your effort, or twists your words into something you never said. In that instant, two things happen simultaneously. Their action occurs entirely outside your control, shaped by their own wounds, their own fears, their own broken architecture of the mind. And then your reaction occurs, which exists entirely within a domain you alone govern. Epictetus writes that some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Up to us are opinion, impulse, desire, aversion, and in short, whatever is of our own doing. Not up to us are body, property, reputation, and office, and in short, whatever is not of our own doing. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives fighting battles in the second category, trying to control what others think of them, trying to force change in people who have no desire to change, trying to win arguments with those who feel more powerful when they are being wounded. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the known world, faced betrayal from men who owed him everything. And yet he wrote that it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. The insult is only an insult once you agree it is one. The manipulation only succeeds once you hand over your own peace as tribute. This is not a call to passivity. This is a call to precision. A Stoic does not ignore cruelty. A Stoic simply refuses to let cruelty dictate the terms of his own inner state. When someone attempts to provoke you, they are in effect asking you to hand them the reins of your mind. Discernment is the refusal to hand over those reins, no matter how skillfully the request is disguised as concern, as love, or as truth. Seneca offers a final piece to this weapon in his letters to Lucilius, warning that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The toxic person's words end the moment they stop speaking. It is you who chooses to keep them alive for hours, for days, sometimes for years, replaying them in the private theater of your own mind. Withdraw your consent from that performance, and the wound loses its power to reopen.
Topic 2. The mirror of provocation.
There is a peculiar truth that most people never discover until it is too late to spare them years of suffering. The people who wound you the deepest are rarely trying to destroy you. They are trying to recruit you into becoming exactly like them. Every act of cruelty is, in some hidden way, an invitation, and the moment you respond with the same venom that was offered to you, you have accepted that invitation without even realizing the exchange took place. Marcus Aurelius warned of this trap with unusual clarity. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Read that again, slowly, because within it lies a weapon most people never learn to wield. When someone humiliates you and you retaliate with equal cruelty, you have not defeated them. You have joined them. You have proven that your composure was only ever a mask, easily removed by anyone willing to apply enough pressure. The toxic person walks away not defeated but validated, having confirmed that everyone, given enough provocation, becomes exactly what they are. This is why provocation functions as a mirror rather than a battlefield. What a manipulator shows you is not your weakness. It is a reflection of their own unhealed wound, projected outward and aimed at whoever stands closest. Epictetus taught his students that no one insults you without your cooperation, because the insult only becomes real the instant you decide it describes you. A person consumed by envy will call you arrogant. A person incapable of loyalty will call you untrustworthy. Their accusations are confessions wearing the disguise of judgment. Seneca observed something equally sharp in his letters, noting that anger, more than any other passion, convinces us we are righteous, even as it destroys the very reason that should govern us. The toxic person wants your anger, because your anger is proof that they still control something inside you. Silence, calm, and measured response deny them this proof entirely. Not because you feel nothing, but because you have chosen not to hand your inner state over as a trophy for their collection. Here lies the deeper discipline. You are not required to prove your character to someone determined to misread it. You are not obligated to defend your worth to someone who benefits from your doubt. The Stoic does not chase the approval of those who thrive on disorder, because a fortress does not need to shout at every traveler who mocks its walls from the outside. It simply remains standing, indifferent to the noise below. What comes next reveals why some people never stop testing your walls, and what their persistence actually says about the war being fought within them.
Topic 3. The architecture of the inner citadel.
Some people will test the same wall for years, not because they believe it will fall, but because they cannot comprehend a wall that refuses to answer them. This persistence is not strength on their part. It is confusion, the disorientation of someone who has never encountered a mind they could not eventually break. Understanding this changes everything about how you interpret their relentless return. Marcus Aurelius gave this inner wall a name: the Citadel, the fortified place within the self where nothing external can ever truly enter unless permission is granted from within. He wrote that men seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the seashore, in the mountains, and yet it is in your power whenever you choose to retire into yourself. This retreat is not escape. It is the construction of a fortress so complete that the storms outside become, at most, weather to be observed rather than threats to be feared. Building this citadel requires understanding what a toxic person is actually attempting to accomplish. They are not simply seeking your compliance, they are seeking access, a foothold inside the one place they cannot otherwise reach: your judgment, your peace, your sense of self. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every carefully worded accusation is an attempt to place one more stone of doubt inside your own foundation, using your own hands to do the damage they could never inflict directly. Epictetus offers the blueprint for refusing this access. He teaches that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we hold about them, and that when we are hindered or disturbed, we should lay the blame on ourselves, on our own opinions, rather than on the events or people involved. This is not self-blame in the wounded sense. It is ownership in the architectural sense, the recognition that only you hold the tools capable of adding or removing stones from your own citadel. No manipulator, however skilled, can lay a single brick without your unconscious cooperation. Seneca adds a final structural principle in his letters, reminding Lucilius that the mind which is anxious about the future is miserable, and that true tranquility comes to those who have learned to inhabit the present moment fully, undistracted by imagined disasters or replayed grievances. A citadel under constant siege from imagined threats will collapse from exhaustion, long before any real enemy arrives at its gates. Peace, therefore, is not the absence of toxic people in your life. Peace is the presence of walls they cannot climb, maintained daily stone by deliberate stone. What follows will show you exactly how to identify the specific attacks these people use against you, and why recognizing their pattern in advance is the surest way to render it powerless.
Topic 4. The 5 patterns of the predator.
Manipulation is not chaos. It is method, refined over years of practice, repeated because it has worked before, and because the manipulator has learned exactly which lever moves you. Once you learn to recognize the pattern rather than react to the moment, you strip the weapon of its element of surprise, and a predictable attack loses most of its power before it even lands. The first pattern is the shifting of blame, a maneuver so common it has become almost invisible to those who endure it repeatedly. The toxic person commits the offense, then within moments reconstructs the narrative until you find yourself apologizing for their behavior. Epictetus warned of exactly this trap, teaching that the ignorant man blames others for his own misfortune, the man beginning to learn blames himself, and the wise man blames neither. To recognize this pattern is to refuse the role assigned to you in a story you never agreed to enter. The second pattern is the manufactured crisis, where calm is treated as a threat, and peace is disrupted deliberately, so the manipulator can then offer to be your rescuer from a storm they themselves created. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the tranquility of one who has thought things through cannot be taken by force, only surrendered, and surrender is exactly what this pattern demands of you, again and again, until exhaustion feels easier than resistance. The third pattern is intermittent affection, warmth offered only long enough to keep you tethered, followed by coldness precise enough to make you question your own worth. This is among the cruelest patterns because it does not rely on constant cruelty. It relies on hope, the hope that the warmth will return if only you try harder, stay longer, forgive one more time. The fourth pattern is the audience performance, where kindness is displayed publicly while cruelty is reserved for moments when no witness remains. Seneca observed that men are more careful of their possessions than of their own minds, and this pattern exploits that very carelessness, betting correctly that your desire to preserve your reputation will silence your account of what truly happens behind closed doors. The fifth pattern is the weaponizing of your own virtues, where your loyalty becomes the leash they hold. Your empathy becomes the door through which every excuse walks freely into your life, and your patience becomes the very reason they never feel the need to change. This final pattern is the most dangerous because it does not ask you to become worse. It asks you to remain exactly as good as you already are, while it quietly profits from that goodness without end. Recognizing these 5 patterns will not stop a manipulator from attempting them. It will stop you from mistaking their design for accident, and design once seen can always be dismantled. What comes next will teach you the precise discipline required to respond to these patterns without losing the very peace you have worked so hard to build.
Topic 5. The discipline of the unmoved response.
Knowledge of a pattern means nothing if the body still reacts before the mind can intervene. And this is where most people fail, not from lack of understanding but from lack of practiced discipline. The gap between provocation and response is where your entire freedom lives, and Stoic philosophy exists almost entirely to widen that gap until it becomes wide enough for wisdom to enter before emotion seizes control. Epictetus taught his students a practice so simple it is often dismissed, and so powerful that mastering it changes the entire trajectory of a life. Between the event and your reaction, he insisted, there must always be a pause, however brief, in which you ask yourself what is actually within your control in this moment. The insult has already been spoken. That cannot be changed. But your face, your breath, your words that follow, These remain entirely yours to command. The predator expects an immediate reaction, and the pause alone disrupts their entire script, often more effectively than any counter-argument could. Marcus Aurelius practiced a related discipline each time he felt anger rising within him, reminding himself that the offending person acts from ignorance of what is truly good, and that a soul which recognizes this ignorance finds it far harder to sustain rage against something so small and so pitiable. This is not an invitation to feel superior. It is an invitation to feel unburdened, because rage is heavy, and the wise carry only what serves them. Seneca described anger as a brief madness, and warned that no other passion wears a more convincing disguise of righteousness, while causing more lasting damage to the one who harbors it. His remedy was not suppression, which merely delays the eruption, but examination, turning toward the anger itself and asking honestly whether the person who provoked it deserves the power being handed to them. Most often, the honest answer diminishes the anger far more effectively than any attempt to force calm from the outside. The unmoved response is not the absence of feeling. It is feeling examined before it is expressed. Emotion filtered through judgment rather than emotion acting as judgment itself. A person who masters this discipline becomes remarkably difficult to manipulate, not because they no longer feel the sting of cruelty, but because the sting no longer dictates their next move. This single shift practiced daily transforms every future encounter with a toxic presence from a battle you might lose into a test you have already prepared to pass. What remains now is understanding what happens after you master this discipline, when the toxic person realizes their old methods no longer work, and what their reaction to your transformation reveals about the war they were truly fighting all along.
Topic 6. The war they cannot win.
Something curious happens the moment a manipulator realizes their old weapons no longer land. They do not simply retreat in peace. Most often they escalate, testing harder, pushing further, searching desperately for the version of you that used to break under pressure. This escalation is not a sign of your failure. It is confirmation that your walls have finally become real, and confirmation is precisely what a predator cannot tolerate. Marcus Aurelius understood this moment intimately, surrounded as he was by men who had grown accustomed to his patience and mistook it for weakness they could exploit indefinitely. He wrote that the best answer to their outrage is a life well lived, not a life spent proving anything to those who caused the outrage in the first place. When your peace no longer requires their approval, and your worth no longer depends on their recognition, you become someone they can no longer locate within their old strategy. This disorientation is often mistaken by the toxic person for coldness, when in truth it is simply the natural result of a citadel finally completed. Epictetus taught that freedom belongs only to the one who desires nothing that lies outside their own control, and a manipulator's entire power depends on your desire for something they can withhold, whether that is affection, approval, or the fragile peace that comes from avoiding their anger. Once that desire dissolves, so does their leverage, entirely and often permanently. They may call you changed. They may call you distant. What they are truly describing without realizing it is a person who has finally stopped supplying the fuel their fire required to keep burning. Seneca offered perhaps the most sobering truth of all in his letters to Lucilius, observing that some people are not meant to be defeated, only outgrown, left behind not through cruelty but through the simple, undramatic act of no longer needing what they once offered. This is the quiet victory the Stoics understood better than any warrior with a sword. You do not need the toxic person to apologize. You do not need them to understand the damage they caused. You do not even need them to change at all. You need only become someone their old methods can no longer touch, and the war, the one fought entirely within your own mind, ends not with their surrender, but with your indifference to whether they surrender or not. Finally, remember this above all else. Every philosopher named in this journey, Marcus in his tent surrounded by war, Epictetus in his chains, Seneca beneath the shadow of a tyrant's blade, faced people far more dangerous than the ones testing you today. And each of them left behind the same inheritance, proof that the citadel within, once properly built, cannot be stormed by any force outside its walls. The battle was never truly against them. It was always the construction of the one place inside you that no one else could ever be permitted to enter uninvited. That place is finished now. guard it, not with anger, but with the quiet, unshakable authority of someone who has already won.